What's up, lifers? Welcome back to 30 to Life. So let's get into this topic, man. I want to speak on the other car and gangs. On the streets, a lot of islanders and Asians, they grow up in certain neighborhoods, they grow up, in this gang culture, and they adapt it as a way of life while they're on the streets.
Let me just pause real quick. So when he says in certain neighborhoods, um, I'm taking it to mean, or I'm taking it to mean that he's talking about in urban communities around a lot of blacks, or in actuality, that's what it is at times. You do have a lot of Asians and Samoans intermingled in the same community as you do a lot of blacks and Hispanics.
Now, I'm not no gang expert, and I wasn't involved in no Asian gangs or no Islander gangs or anything like that. But there's some hype on YouTube where a lot of the brothers that are from, certain gangs like Crips and Bloods, they have issues with Islanders and Asians who go to prison and decide to ride with their peoples instead.
Now I've heard, individuals actually say that, like, okay, so if you have an Asian, for instance, he's on the street and he's representing Crip, which is of course a predominantly black gang, and though in some neighborhoods you do have gangs that are Asian Crip gangs, Asian Samoan gangs, so on and so forth. But for the most part, Crips, Bloods are predominantly black gangs. And so you do have dudes that be like, okay, man, if they're out, they're representing, a black gang on the street. Why do they come to prison and then drop being a Crip and just go with, go with being agents or whatever? And to keep it 100, and in some instances, I have seen Mexicans who are Crips or Bloods come to prison and stop pushing Blood and Crip, and they ride with their people.
Of riding with the gang thing. So, I just want to kind of clear this up. And basically, what I want to say is this: you'll have an Islander gang, right, that claims Crip. But before the Crip, you'll see Sons of Samoa, or you'll see Tongan Crip gang. You see what I'm saying? So for the brothers out there who are upset, you need to realize that these type of gangs, they're banging their race before the Crip or the Blood. And it's the same thing with the Asians. It's the same thing, you know what I mean? You got Cambodians who are Crips, but they always say Cambodian, Crips or whatever, you know what I mean? They put their race in front of the Crip or the Blood. So when they do go to prison, it's obvious that, before the gang shit, they represent their people. And so I want to clear that up for a lot of people who are on YouTube who are complaining about shit like that and saying, oh yeah, they want to give up the flag and run with their people. They have already been running with their people on the streets.
Now that's a good point right there, and that's what I was just talking about earlier. You will have some Samoans, some Asians who, while they're Samoan or Asian, are part of a predominantly black gang. But like I mentioned earlier, you do have some gangs, Crips, Bloods, they are, like he said, Tongan Crips. So they're Crips, but they're Tongans. They're Tongans who just happen to be Crips, as opposed to a Tongan joining a black gang. You know what I'm saying? So then, of course, it does make sense then in that aspect, in my opinion, to run, of course, with your people.
Now, the other side of that whole thing is that you will see some Samoans and some Tongans and some Asians who are actually in predominantly black gangs, okay? And I'm not gonna put nobody's gang out there on blast or anything like that and say, who's in what, but you all know what I'm talking about. And some of you brothers that, are from those gangs where you have a Samoan partner or Asian partner within your crew, then but that it ain't hella Samoans or hella Asians with you. It's predominantly black and maybe a scattered few, that are in the gang, right? So what happens is when we go to prison, then, you have a choice. So basically, if you're in county jail, I can see that you come, especially down south, in LA and all that, I could see that you're going to be housing with your gang and things like that in county jail. But when you go to prison, especially California prison, it's different. California prison, has different politics. They do have gangs and gang politics, but they also have race. So, when you go in there, you're going to have, they're going to ask you, what are you? If you're white, you're white. Okay, well, I'm white. You say I'm white. All right. Well, are you affiliated? Yeah, I affiliate with the Crips. Okay. So are you going with the whites or are you going with the Crips? You understand? And that's what happens. It's the same thing with the Asians and the Islanders. You know what I mean? So that's one thing that I want to make sure that you guys understand when you're trying to group, these guys as part of gangs that are coming from predominantly black gangs. It's not always so true. It's not always necessarily true. Now, you're gonna have every once in a while, and there are cases like this, of course, because I've met them, other Samoans or whatever, and Asians that are from black gangs who decide to go with their gang, and so that's when you'll see an Islander or an Asian celled up, with a black or whatever, whoever's predominant, whatever their gang is. Okay. So it no longer matters to them about what race they are. They decided to ride with their gang. Okay. So that happens. Now, what does it look like from our point of view, from the other car? When we see that, nothing, man. We're not tripping on that dude. If anything, we wish they was with us, because we just feel like they're out of place. I mean, it just looks out of place too, you know what I'm saying? So we feel they're out of place. We feel they should come home, you know what I'm saying? But it's totally up to them. We're not tripping on them. We're not beefing with them. We're not beefing with their gang. We don't give a fuck. We are another car. And so the other car is made up of what? Everyone who is Islander and Asian. Simple as that, you know what I mean?
So yeah, so he just made a good point, right? And I think it's like that with everybody, to keep it 100, right? He says that, what does it look like when you happen to see a Asian or a Samoan who is pushing with his gang? So he's in the cell with a black dude, because of course, if you are an Asian Crip um on the streets, and then you come to prison and you decide to push with the Asians and the other car, then you are going to be in a cell with another Asian, right? Or you could be in a cell with a Samoan or anybody who is pushing with the other car. But if you come to prison as a Crip and you choose to push with the Crips, then that shows that you are functioning with the blacks, right? And so he says, what does that look like? Of course, well, he said, we wish that he would be with us, because I think it's just natural for anybody who is of any race to see someone of your race in prison when things can get racial and things are racially separated, not segregated, but separated. When you see somebody from your race pushing with another race, of course, that's something that you're not necessarily gonna like. When we saw black dudes who ran with the Mexicans, of course, you had a lot of blacks in their feelings about that, right? Because you get the sense that the dude is a race traitor. So it's just natural, I think, to feel that way. But now he expresses, unlike many other different organizations back in prison, or different races back in prison during my time, when they would see somebody who is from their race, being in the cell with a black or what, or a Crip or a Blood or whatever, they're not tripping on that. They're not tripping to the point where they want it to be physical, like dude is gonna push with us or else. So everybody kind of views this situation a little bit different.
So you're gonna have Samoans, Tongans, Hawaiians, any islanders in there, Fijian. You're gonna have Cambodians, Chinese, Thai, Hmong. You're gonna have, what I'm saying, Vietnamese. You're gonna have every Asian, within the car too. So the thing about us is when we come together, and we have to drop the stuff, what I'm saying? So say like some of the homies that come in, they was with that gang stuff, but they decided to run with their people. Well, you're gonna have some that were Crips and some that were Bloods on the streets. They ain't got no choice but to get along. You know what I mean? Because we short. we short, and when we come together, we all got to look out for one another. Real shit. So if they have a problem with each other, like let's say something happened, which has happened before, for example.
Now let me pause it right here and address something that he addressed. He said that within the other car, you may see dudes in the car, Asians or whoever, who on the streets they were Crips. Some of them was Bloods, and now they are pushing as a collective to preserve the entire other car. Right? What he's speaking on is very similar to how the dudes from the Inland Empire function. Right? You would have a lot of individuals who would look at the IE car as different or less than because it did contain Crips and Bloods pushing together. And of course, on the streets, especially from my generation, Crips and Bloods were rival. They were mortal enemies, things of that nature, right? But the IE car and the way it's set up, or the way it was set up before I came to prison, from what I understand, it was established like that in pretty much the same way that he's explaining because you didn't have a lot of dudes from IE on the yard. Like, so when you go to prison, there's always going to be a lot of dudes from these bigger cities, whether it's Los Angeles, whether it's Compton, whether it's Oakland, whatever, right? So you might have like, I would go years at times before I seen somebody from Bannon. You may have these other little cities in the Inland Empire, where dude is from the Inland Empire, and there's nobody from his city. So it's pretty much he's like running by himself. So at the time, to my understanding, when it was established, that's why it was established like that. Pretty much just to say that the Inland Empire, preserving the Inland Empire and preserving the respect of people from the Inland Empire was bigger than a person's individualistic um, affiliations. And so if you're gonna function with the Inland Empire, you're gonna put the Crip and the Blood stuff to the side because, homie, we are united for the respect of everybody from the Inland Empire. Because, as it was told to me, a lot of dudes from the Inland Empire was not getting their respect. This is no shout out, this is no disrespect to the dudes from LA, but I mean, and you'll see many dudes outside of LA have the same feelings. Dudes from LA at times, not all of them, but some of them will look down on other Crips and Bloods if they're not from Los Angeles, with the feeling that, okay, where you're from is not as rough as where I'm from, so you're not as hard as I am.
We had two Asian homies. One had killed the other homie's brother on the street. So they were from rival gangs. And so they hit the same yard. So, we let them go ahead and get their little head up. You know what I mean? They got to get their little head up or whatever. Of course, the homie that lost his brother felt some type of way. He wanted more than just that, just a head up fade. But we wouldn't allow it. You know what I'm saying? Because we aren't gonna sit here and fight one another. That's what we ain't gonna do. We're short enough as it is, and everybody else on the fucking line is pretty much not our friends. They're against us, of course. They're separate from us. So we have to stand up for one another. So we let them catch that fade, and then we could see that the one who lost his brother, he just was having a hard time letting it go. So what happened is we ended up having to split them, and we had to put one on one other yard and kept the other one here, and that's just how we had to do it. But
So basically, what he's saying sounds like it's pretty much what I earlier just described. Regardless of that dude's personal feelings about the loss of his brother, the bigger picture was preserving the unity, the respect, and the safety of those that pushed with the other car. Because I think anybody who has been to prison will agree they're most of the times the smallest car on the yard. They're not there's not a lot of Asians, or excuse me, Samoans, or excuse me, once again, there's not a lot of Asians, Samoans, Chinese people who make up the other car on that yard. They may have 30 or 40 of them, but then you have, the blacks, you have way more than that. You have the whites way more than that. The Hispanics way more than that. So it is very important that they be unified. Right now, I know some people are looking at it like, man, and I was feeling the same way. Like, man, if I hit the yard and a dude that took my brother's life, man, fuck that. You know what I'm saying? I gotta have at this dude and fuck a head up fade. This dude doesn't get to kill my brother, and then we have a fist fight, and I'm cool with that. No, I want to stab this dude and take his life too. If not, stab him up as bad as possible. But once again, that is a dude is who feels that way. You're looking at that from a personal viewpoint. At the end of the day, it's not about a person getting revenge when you function with a collective, because sometimes in a situation like that, what's going to happen is, say the dude who lost his brother, he may have 3 or 4 homies that he's real close with, friends or whatever, within that car. The other dude who took the life of his brother, he may have a few homies, because in a car, you're always, if you have 20 people in a car, and sorry, I know I'm bouncing around a little bit, but if you have 20 people in a collective, you always gonna have your 2 or your 3 or your 4 you may be a little bit more closer with, due to you guys may have the same interests or whatever. So while all you guys are still homies and willing to ride up with each other, you still gonna have some that you get along better than others. And so the ones that you get along with better than others, once you catch the fade, and if you lose or whatever, they may start to then have animosity against the other dude that you fought and his few little selective friends. And so in reality, what it does is it creates dissension and inner beef in that car, and it eventually can tear down the unification of that car. And so, from an aspect of looking at things in totality from a whole, yes, it is better to eliminate the bullshit between the two. I'm not just to allow you to kill the homie, because that fucks up morale, it weakens numbers, and a whole lot of stuff. And once again, at the end of the day, it's in the best interest of everybody who pushes with the Samoans, the other car, the Asian Samoans, the Chinese, the Japanese, the Filipino, so on and so forth, to preserve that car. So he goes on to describe they had to separate them, put one on one yard, one on the other. And, when you have a very small car and that, that's the right thing.
You allowed when you come in, with the others, you allowed to catch that fade if you got to do it. You know what I mean? But then that shit's got to go. You know what I mean? You're not gonna stab, the homie. We're not gonna let you do that. You know what I'm saying? It's just the way it is. We're all one. We're all together. And if you want to bang, then you can go ahead and do your gang banging thing. You know what I mean? But once you in the other car, all that shit stops. All right. So.
And I made a video, I don't know how long it was ago, 6 months, a year ago, and I said, in my opinion, in prison, the other car was the best car. And the reason I said that is because I seen more genuine love in that car than in any other car. They was quick to handle their business. Don't get that part mistaken. But they showed real, true, genuine love. They function like they function more of a family than any other car. In my opinion, right? They always looked out for each other, and it was much, much less bullshit going on inside the car. And in a lot of these other cars, it's a lot of bullshit going on. It's a lot of bullshit going on. Sometimes there's some gossip, some he said, she said, disliking dudes, getting into it behind petty issues, fighting, and doing a lot of shit to break down the car, right? And not saying that it they didn't have that from time to time. But if they did have it, which I'm sure it probably occurred at times, if they did have it, they was real good at not letting it get to the yard and not let other people see. One thing I really disliked about the homies in the Inland Empire car, the IE car, is when they would get out there and fight each other on the yard for small petty reasons and put on a spectacle, and in my opinion, giving the other people on the yard something to watch and something to see, man. Because at the end of the day, it's all about the car that you push with. So for many reasons, I just felt that the other car was the best car. There was a lot of unity, a lot of genuine love they showed each other, and much less inner car bullshit.
Basically, it's like that, man, and it's all love. And a lot of times you'll see these cats that have animosity with each other. it's the same thing. Next thing you know, they like best friends. You'll see a Samoan dude and Tongan dude who get along really good, man, and they kick it and they work out together every day. You know what I'm saying? They got a lot of shit in common. And so that's usually what happens, within the car. You start realizing how similar you are and how the gangs just pretty much separated y'all. Because that's what it does. Gangs don't do nothing for our communities. It does nothing but separate your people, hurt your people, and drag your community down. You know what I mean? And when it comes down at the end of the fucking day, we all eat fucking taro and corned beef. You know what I'm saying? We all eat fish. We love coconuts. We love it all. You know what I mean? We got the same foods in the house. We just call it by a slightly different name. A lot of times our languages are very similar. And so, we realize how much in common we have just with the upbringing, the way our parents raised us, the way our culture is. It's all pretty much the same. We all look out for our family, respect our elders. Family is very important to us. Food, we love food, you know what I'm saying? And eating together is one of those things that just brings us together where, it's a common, denominator between all of us. We're all one. And so, I'm glad for the other car. I'm happy that the other car exists in prison because I'm telling you, man, from our example, showing how much we can put our differences aside and come together. And whenever we had to go to war or anything like that, we didn't want to see each other go down. There was so much pride in it. I don't care if you're Tongan. I don't care if you're Cambodian, Vietnamese. I don't give a fuck. You are my peoples. You my homie. And I'm not going to sit here and watch you go down. We going down together. And that's how it was, you know what I mean? And there's a sense of pride in that. There's a lot of unity in that. Our culture really shows when we have to, bring the beast out in us, you know what I'm saying? You start to see, what we truly are about. We are warriors, all of us. So, coming together was one of the best things that could ever happen for us in the prison system. I wish I could see that more out here today on the streets, but unfortunately it's not like that. We allow the gangs to separate us, continuously separate us, and make us think that as if we're different. And it's sad. And it's sad when you see Asian people killing Asian people, and even Samoans and Tongans, Samoans killing Samoans. It's really sad.
The name of this channel, I'm gonna end this video right here. The name of this channel though is 30 to Life. I don't know if he still does current videos, but I just feel in this video right here, he gave up a lot of information, a lot of intriguing information. One thing I didn't know, considering all the time that I didn't know that Samoans and Tongans kind of get into it, on the streets or whatever, right? And he made some great points, man, because the gang shit, man, it really, tears us apart. And it's crazy because in going to prison, I met a whole lot of people, man, and I honestly would say that I keep in contact now with more Bloods than I probably do Crips. You know what I'm saying? But you know, I went to prison during the time I like to refer to as traditional gang banging, right? And so, going to prison was really my first time being around Bloods, especially in that numerous capacity, such large amounts. And now, I keep in touch with a lot of Bloods that I met, because you realize after a certain point in prison that, damn, we pretty much all the same, homie. Like he was talking about how, Samoans and Tongans and Asians, they all pretty much are from the same culture. They eat the same foods and stuff, and they just may call it different, the same with the brothers, you know what I'm saying? And just because we happen to live in certain towns or certain neighborhoods is really the main reason we don't get along, But so now I'm in touch with my boy Snow from Swan, my boy Johnny from well, I'm not even gonna say his name because he don't normally put his hood out there. But Johnny, he used to go by Q-Tip, you know what I'm saying? I'm in touch with him. I'm in touch with Big West from Bounty Hunter, Psych from Bounty Hunter. A lot of different dudes, as well as a lot of other individual Crips who I met while I was in prison. With dudes from Hoover, dudes from 60s, dudes who don't necessarily get along and talk to each other, but by me being from the Inland Empire, not necessarily having any street beats with those individuals, it allowed me to be cool with a whole lot of dudes from LA who don't necessarily get along with each other, man. So it was definitely, man, it was definitely an eye opener, going to prison, meeting all these different individuals, and then something happens and we have to come together behind race. And you realize, like, okay, damn, this is crazy. If we can come together and get along in here where we don't have the luxury of getting too far out of each other's space and eyesight due to being confined in prison, it's crazy how we can't get along out there on the street when we have access to go anywhere we want to go and don't have to be around people in close proximity. But anyway, man, like I said, once again, the name of this channel was 30 to Life. The name of my channel was 16 to Life. So y'all already know what it is. It's your boy 16 to Life. Resume normal program.